Good morning, guys. Welcome to the Young and Sing podcast with your host, Tamarflourish, and this is our first official podcast for the year. I'm so excited to be back here again. And yes, so as we said in the last podcast episode, there's going to be a few twists and turns because I am currently undergoing my law school training in the Nigerian Law School Yola campus, Adamawa State. So we're going to be having our podcast episodes twice every month, say first Monday of the month and third Monday of the month. There could be changes, but it's going to consistently be 2 Mondays in a month. So yes, so on today's podcast episode, as you can see from the title, we're talking about your trauma and inner child wounds. So yeah, what do you think when someone says inner child wounds? What comes to your mind? What comes to mind when it's mentioned? So we're going to get into all of that today, and there's a lot to talk about inner child wounds. So we're just going to skim through the surface, and the subsequent episode go deep into each of the inner child wounds and how to recover, how to heal from those. So a lot of us are actually moving about with our inner child wounds, and it leads us, it guides us, it directs us, it speaks to us. It's the loudest voice in our heads. It is just what is living through us, right? And so you see a lot of men that are still boys. You see a lot of women that are still girls. So what are inner child wounds? Because basically that's the concept of inner child wounds. The fact that a woman still remains a girl and lives like the girl, the wounded girl that she is on her inside, and the man, lives like the boy, the wounded boy that he is on his inside. So yeah, we're going to be finding out what are inner child wounds. Now, based on Google's definition, which may not be all encompassing until we get into the nitty-gritties, the tiny details and all whatnot. But then we're going to make do with that in this episode. So, what are inner child wounds? Inner child wounds or attachment wounds can happen when a child experiences a traumatic experience, and it is the emotional and biological responsibility of parents and guardians to create a safe environment for their children. But unfortunately, it doesn't always happen like that, and so inner child wounds occur during the childhood stage of growth and development of a child, where the child experiences some traumatic events that now begin to form that child's perception of life, that child's emotional state, that child's psychological state, that child's mental state, and even his or her emotional state. So it defines the trajectory of that child, how she thinks, how he thinks, how he behaves, how he fears, how he loves, how he pursues after things, how he shows up, his confidence, and just a whole lot of things. So yes, inner child wounds encompasses all of this. So in this episode, we're just going to be going through as I said earlier, I'm not going to be going deep into each of them, But in subsequent episodes, we are going to pick one and each and deal with them so that each of us can actually sit down with ourselves and ask questions that are very important to know if we are healed from our inner child wounds or we are still carrying our inner child wounds up and down, and then living from the place of that wounded girl or living from the place of that wounded boy. So, a lot of things, a lot of people say that inner child wounds have 5 categories, like 5 soul wounds that constitute inner child wounds, and it's just a lot. But I think it's encompassed, or it's summarized in 4 types of inner child wounds, or 4 categories of inner child wounds, and that's what I will be going with and mentioning today. So one of it is the abandonment wound. The other is the guilt wound. The other is the trust wound, and then neglect wound. So we have 4 of them that summarizes the kind of inner child wounds, or the categories of inner child wounds, or the types of inner child wounds that each of us experience because of how we were brought up by parents or guardians, and their lack of knowledge and awareness on how to actually raise a child without creating those child wounds that will set the trajectory of how the child is going to live his or her adult life. So here, for abandonment wound, it's described like you feel it's like, now I'm mentioning the signs and symptoms of this wounds, and it's not comprehensive enough, right? But these are just pointers to how the inner child wounds shows up in individuals, right? And so abandonment wound gives or has the feeling of, or makes you to have the feeling of being left out. So in different situations, in different scenarios, you just feel left out. And I know from personal experience that I had that so much. So much. I had that so much until I got to know about my traumas and embraced it, right? Because you have to accept that you are wounded, your soul is wounded. You have to accept that you have trauma, right? And then seek healing. But there has to be acceptance. So I embraced my trauma and began to work on it. And I saw and I realized that I had the abandonment wound because I always had the feeling of being left out. Amongst my friends, if I have a friend group of 3 people, and say those 2 other people just probably get to do something, or because of certain situations, I just begin to feel left out. And even among my classmates, if I had to do a group assignment and all of those stuffs, and probably they go ahead of me, or they know it in a certain way, or the feeling of being left out just arises from nowhere, right? So that's the abandonment wound. And then another sign and symptom of the abandonment wound is fears of being left. Now the other one is you have a feeling of being left out every time you're with a group of people. You feel left out. You feel like there's something that you're not knowing. You feel like there's something that you don't know. There's something that like you feel like you're left out, right? It's a feeling of being left out. But this second one is you are afraid of being left. You're afraid of being abandoned. So you do not even want to create the space to host friends. You do not want even to give, you don't want to even give the chance to people to become your friends. I had that too. I always ran away from friendships I felt like, these people are too much for me. They will abandon me, even relationships, right? And then another thing is, um abandonment wound has the sign or symptom of being hating um alone time. Like, you can't find yourself being alone and be comfortable with that, right? So you always want to be attached to people. um you always want to be attached. Probably, you don't want people to leave you out. You want to follow this person, you want to follow this person, you want to be in the midst of these people, you want to be in the company of people every time. So that's one of the signs of abandonment wound. And then another one is codependent. And this codependency is a broad concept, very very broad, right? Somebody that cannot really exist on their own. That's the general thing we know about codependency, right? But it has a lot of nuances to it, and so we are going to get into all of this in our subsequent episodes and talk about how to heal from them, right? So codependent, you can't be on your own. You have to live on someone else, live on someone else emotion, live on someone else, basically emotions, right? Depending on their emotions and the emotional needs and fulfillment they give you, your emotional needs that they fulfill. So you depend on them. Yeah, so we are going to go into that. And then another sign is um of abandonment trauma is, you always, at every conflict, at every tension, at every misunderstanding, you always threaten to leave. I had that. My God. So you just want to be the first person to jump out so that it will be said and it will be heard that you are the one that did the breakup. You are the one that left the friendship, not the other person leaving you. So you just want to have that narrative somewhere in your head. You don't want to be the loser. So yeah, that's another sign. And then another one is, you normally attract emotionally unavailable people. Have you noticed that you attract people with similar trauma, right? In my last relationship, I realized that when I began to figure out my trauma, I realized that I had attracted someone that had a lot of trauma like I did. So I had abandonment wound and he had abandonment wound too, right? It showed up in different ways. So both of us were afraid of being abandoned in the relationship. We're afraid of being left out in the relationship. And it's a legitimate fear, or will I say it's legitimate to feel like you don't want to lose your relationship. But trust me, there are unhealthy signs that feeling is most often than not driven by trauma rather than from a healthy place, right? So yes, there's that. So you usually attract people that are emotionally unavailable. Then moving over to guilt wound. Yes, one of the signs of guilt wound is we always feel very sorry or bad for everything, whether it's your fault or not even your fault. And guys, this sign and symptom is calling my name. I always feel very, very sorry, very, very bad, especially when I'm in the wrong. And before I can get over it, it's gonna take a long, long time. So yes, that's how that sign and symptom feels. And then another sign and symptom of the guilt wound is that you don't like to ask for things. And again, this sign and symptom is calling my name. So I had a lot of the guilt wound. And we're going to go into the roots of those wounds, how they come about from both parents, right? It could be daddy issues, it could be mommy issues, it just could be from any of the daddy or mommy issues. And then a child has all these wounds or some of these wounds. Yeah, so I don't like to ask for things. Even even till now, I can hardly ask my parents, ask people, friends, or I can hardly. And if I ever do that, you know that I have gone through a battle in my mind to be able to ask. And people don't really know that, right? And so that is one of the wound. You don't like to ask for things, even when you are deserving of it, even when you need it desperately. So bad. And then another sign is you use guilt to manipulate other people. I probably didn't have this because I always used to feel like the guilty one, like the bad one. I didn't need, like, I couldn't get help sometimes. Like, I was just scared people will not be able to help me because I'm not really that good, right? So I really didn't have these signs and symptoms. So you could have a wound but not really manifest all the signs and symptoms of it. So I have someone close to me that actually had this symptom or sign, um using guilt to manipulate people. And her needs were always met, right? Yeah. They still are till today. So that's one of the signs. Another is you're afraid to set boundaries, so you can hardly say no because you're afraid. You feel bad, you feel sorry for the person. And guys, guess what? I had that. And sometimes it can be interpreted as the Messiah complex. Yes, the Messiah complex. So yeah, setting boundaries, having boundaries is just a big deal. And then another one is you normally attract people who make you feel guilty. Bro, emotional blackmail is a real deal. And so, because you have the guilty ones, you attract people that make you feel guilty every time, make you feel sorry every time, make you feel bad every time, even when you are not wrong, right? They make you feel wrong for taking decisions that you are responsible for taking for your own good. So that's one of it. And then the trust wound. For the trust wound, one of the signs and symptoms is you are afraid to be hurt. And guess what? I had that too. I had the fear of being hurt. Until today, I still have the fear of being hurt. After I lost my relationship, I was, oh my god, I can't get into another relationship because I'm going to be hurt. So it's just that you're always looking at the possibility of being hurt, more than taking the risk, right? And it's not bad to be afraid to get hurt. It's actually not a bad feeling, but where it stems from your wounds, trauma, rather than a healthy perspective. That's where the bad that's where the problem is. That's where the problem lies, right? And then another sign of trust wound is you don't trust yourself. You don't trust yourself. My god. You don't trust yourself. So yeah, you don't trust yourself. You don't trust yourself. So how can you trust other people? So I also have this. I don't trust myself, especially these days. Like, there were a whole lot of things I thought I was bigger than, and then I found myself going into them, and I'm like, okay, I don't even know myself, and I can't trust myself. So how can I trust you? Right? So there's that. But this one is really, really very dangerous. Another sign is you find ways not to trust people. So you just assume a lot of reasons why and why you cannot trust another person at all. Even when there shouldn't be those reasons. But then you just find yourself looking for reasons why you can't trust people, being suspicious. I remember someone that used to call me paranoid. I think that was the first time I was hearing the word paranoid. And I was scared. I said, so I went to check up the word, and it's being suspicious of people that they will hurt you or harm you. And I'm like, oh my god, I actually have that. So yeah, you're often paranoid, always suspecting people, not wanting to trust them, looking for something, and you always find, right? And then another sign is you feel insecure and need lots of external validation. My God, my days. Ooh, I needed that external validation. Even to do certain things. See, in my walk with God, my journey, in my walk with God, um, a, a, a point came. The Lord had to point it out to me that Marvelous. If I tell you to do something, you don't need people's approval to do it. And I'm like, I just want them to understand me. I want them to see it the way I see it. I want them to understand it the way I understand it. I don't want to be criticized. I want them to validate me and say, okay, you say God told you. Okay, go ahead and do it because God told you. But my guys and my babes, you guys, it's quite difficult, right? That external validation thing is what a lot of us fall into. We just need people to validate us, and it's quite difficult. Yeah, so that's one of the signs. Another sign and symptom of trust wounds is you don't feel safe at all. And something I heard from Tim Ross, right? And he's, I think, therapist, or his friend who is a therapist. What's her name again? Is it Gina? Oh my god, I can't remember. But yeah, I heard this, like, safety is the highest emotional need. Right? Feeling safe is like the highest emotional need. When there's other healthy emotions, love, trust, mention them. What have you? I can't even remember them again. Care, attention, consideration, all of those, it all amounts to safety. So when a person has all his positive emotional needs met, why do I call it positive emotional needs? All the good emotional needs, I don't even know how to, I don't know what to term that. Yeah. But then, yeah, when a person has all these emotional needs, love, the healthy emotional needs met, it all amounts to feeling safe. And safety is the ultimate emotion everyone looks for in a person, in a place, in a community, wheresoever. You just want to feel safe, right? So people with trust wounds don't feel safe at all because they don't have trust for anybody, place, thing, even themselves. So they don't even feel safe with themselves, right? And then the last one is you always attract somebody that has same wounds with you, same inner child wounds with you. So if you have trust wound, you're going to attract someone that don't feel safe also. So that's that. You always attract your kind of people. And then there's also the fourth wound that we're going to deal with today, the neglect wound. So people who have inner child wounds of neglect, The struggle to let things go. So they always remember the past, going to the past, going to the past, wanting to still embrace what is supposed to have passed, right? The struggle to let things go. They have low self esteem. I think I had that. I used to struggle to let things go. I used to keep a lot of grudge, keep memories. If you call me names, I'm going to write it down, write the dates, just mark it for you, right? And then they also have low self worth. I had that a lot, and they used to get angry easily. A lot of things can trigger them. Yeah, I also used to have that a lot. I used to have that a lot. Like, don't just say something that's mean to me. Don't just say something that will just trigger me, right? So I will get angry, very pissed at you, and I will shut down, like walk out, shut down, or not even speak to you again. Then another one is people who suffer from neglect wound, the struggle to say no, and also that boundary stuff, right? That we had in guilt wound, neglect wound, the struggle to say no. Another um sign that the people with neglect wound suffer is they repress their emotions a lot. They repress their feelings, right? They don't want you to see what they feel because maybe to make them look weak, or you will not even pay attention to what they feel, and so they repress their emotions. Another sign is they fear being vulnerable because you may also neglect that. You may leave them, you may take advantage of them, right? You may neglect that, so they don't want to show you their vulnerability in any way. Another sign of neglect wound is they will normally attract people who don't appreciate them or make them feel seen. So it will always be that circle of attracting the same people that would hurt you and not make you feel seen. So yeah, guys, this is where we're going to wrap up for today, and see you guys in the next episode of the Young and Sane podcast. I'm so glad you stayed up to this point, and I hope you got something. I want you to look at the mirror and take a self-reflection at yourself and your patterns of behavior. You know yourself more than anybody can know you. You should know yourself more than anybody can know you. Sometimes we don't even know ourselves, right? So you have to look at yourself from a reflective stance and ask yourself, do I exhibit any of these behavioral patterns? Do I have any of these feelings? Right? Do I have the neglect wound? Do I have the trust wound? Do I have the guilt wound? Do I have the abandonment wound? Yeah, just find out, and we're going to work on it step by step from the next episode. So see you guys in the next episode. Make sure you follow this podcast, the Young and Sane podcast, on whatever platform you're listening to. Subscribe, yeah, and then share it. Please share it. I'd love you to drop your reviews and comments, guys. It's very, very much needed. Your feedback will be very much appreciated. Till next time, I want you to stay curious, stay open-minded, and seek healing every day. Bye bye.